Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. As you know, this is a show about astrology, and I try to find the best guests I can in the world to talk about the interesting topics that are current to us today with regard to astrology. I find astrology to be one of the most compelling and unique and accurate divination tools available, and so therefore, when I find something that works so well and I like the other people's opinions on it, it's great to have a conversation about. We'll be talking about what's going on with Capricorn in a few minutes. My guest is Joyce Levine. She'll be on in a few minutes. Before we get started, I want to remind you about my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon. In there, you'll find a couple of paragraphs of mundane astrology. Then I break it out into the individual signs. And if you read your sun sign and your ascendant, if you know it, put the two together, you'll get a pretty good idea what's going down in the world. If you want more accurate information, you should obviously contact a professional astrologer. This is just the sun sign astrology. It gives you an idea what's going on for the world that day, or that week, rather. I also have links in there to my podcast and my television series as well, so I encourage you to do that. You can get to that from my website, chrisflisher.com or turningofthewheel.com. Without further ado, let's get my guest on, Joyce Levine. Her website is joycelevine.com. She's the author of Breakthrough Astrology and has been an astrologer for probably 40 years or more, and is out of Massachusetts, and she was the former president of the NCGR, which is a well-known astrological community that you might all well know. So welcome to the show today, Joyce. It's great to have you back on again.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we were discussing about the idea of, Jupiter's just ingressed into Capricorn, and he's going to be joining Saturn, and of course Venus is there today as well, and Pluto. And, it's a curious time because Jupiter tends to bring goodness and abundance, or oftentimes, to the signs in which it dwells, but that can also be misconstrued because it also tends to amplify things. So I'm curious what your thoughts are in the...
Actually, that's just what I was going to start with.
Oh, okay.
Because people tend to see Jupiter as good. Mm-hmm. So Jupiter is the planet that has to do with opportunity and abundance. But Jupiter's the planet of values.
Right.
And, well, I'll go back to the abundance first. Jupiter makes things bigger.
Right. So
if you have a good situation, it can get better. But if you have a bad situation, it can get worse.
Right, that's the double-edged sword.
People always sort of think, oh, Jupiter transits are coming along, now my life is going to be better. But if what Jupiter is triggering in an individual's chart are challenging planetary combinations,
right,
it makes those challenges basically bigger or more evident.
Right. More predominant in your life. They become much more predominant in your life if you're having an issue, yeah.
Exactly. And Jupiter in Capricorn is a conservative placement.
Right.
And we already have Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. And so, Jupiter values are more, like work hard, do the right thing. Capricorn values are more like work hard, do the right thing.
Be responsible, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, there's nothing wrong with those things. But the time frame of Jupiter in Capricorn tends to be a more conservative time frame, just like the people who are born with Jupiter in Capricorn tend to have more conservative values. Now, that's obviously a generalized statement because nobody has only one planet in their chart.
Of course.
And there's never only one thing going on at a given point in time. Mm-hmm. But Jupiter in Capricorn is Saturn's domain because Saturn's the natural ruler of Capricorn. So Jupiter going into Capricorn has to operate, in a sense, under Saturn.
Right. So in that case, you could see it almost amplifying the role of Saturn, because Saturn is, is more happy in Capricorn. It's the place it belongs, and as Jupiter comes and joins Saturn, I would expect that to sort of amplify the responsibility quality of what Saturn is engaged in, sort of that doing the right thing, the hard work quality.
It does, but I think that the other thing you have to look at it from sort of a value standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, my politics, I mean, in some ways I should keep we should always keep politics out of astrology in terms of personal
Well,
view.
I agree with that, but I think that when the times warrant that when the planets are so reflective of what we're going through at the time, I think politics has to enter into the picture.
Oh, I actually meant from a personal standpoint.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
I mean, because I think that the outer planet transits always have to do with longer term political cycles.
Of course,
remember,
yeah.
Jupiter is like, you might call Jupiter like the baby sister or the baby brother to the other planets, because it's the largest planet, but it's only in a sign for 1 year.
Right, so it's a quick moving outer
So
planet.
Jupiter is not going to overcome the other planets in a particular sign.
Especially since it moves so quickly, and Saturn's a very much slower, so it's going to be a much different cycle.
I mean, the main universal cycles, or in terms of what's going on in the world, for me, have to do with Pluto and Neptune,
Mm-hmm.
because they're in signs for so long. And Pluto, when Neptune's in a sign, that sign tends to get idealized.
Right.
When Pluto is in a sign, the dark side of that sign comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, and I'm going to come back to Jupiter and Capricorn, but I just want to put a larger framework to this.
Sure, that's good.
Before I do that.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote an article, and people were interested, they could find it on my website, about Neptune going into Capricorn and how socialism was going to make, or the idea of socialism was going to make a return. Which at the time I wrote, when Jupiter went into Capricorn, when Neptune went into Capricorn, I am really sorry.
That's about, that's quite a while ago.
When Neptune went into Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
nobody was thinking about socialism.
Right.
Neptune in Pisces is also sort of like a return to spirituality.
Right. I also think Neptune in Pisces is sort of behind the fake news, thrust that we've been hearing about too, because there's a big illusion quality.
Well, Neptune on the positive end is creativity and spirituality, and on the negative end is always illusion.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've always thought too, yeah.
But the sign that Neptune is in tends to be idealized, for better or worse. It doesn't mean the sign is any better than it ever was, or that the things associated with that sign are any better or any worse than they ever were.
Right. And Pisces is pretty idealized anyway. It's very much of a sort of a spiritual sign to begin with.
Exactly. Think about going back to the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
when Neptune was in Capricorn. CEOs were idealized.
Everything was idealized, yeah.
Big business and money were idealized. Now Pluto's in Capricorn, and, big business and CEOs are vilified.
Yeah, I know.
But along with that, Pluto in Capricorn because Pluto brings out the dark side of a sign, the dark side of capitalism, the dark side of hierarchical structures is at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturn, along with Pluto, doesn't make it better, it makes it darker.
Makes it darker. So that's just why we're seeing so much, I think, corruption and that's sort of the amplification of what's, that dark side. You said sort of the secretive dark side of corruption and what goes on behind the scenes. We're seeing all that today.
Absolutely. And what Pluto brings things to the surface.
Mm. Like lancing a boil, I always say.
But it doesn't, but things don't change until Pluto leaves the sign.
Right, exactly. Which is going to be, we've got a ways to go still there.
Yeah, exactly. It's 2024.
Mm.
And that's only when it starts. Usually when a planet gets to the middle of a sign is when it's more obvious, particularly with the longer term planets.
Right. It's most effective in the center. I agree with that too, yeah.
No, or I think most obvious. I'd say more like most obvious rather than most effective, because I think it's going on anyway.
Probably,
but it's not. But it's not noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
And with Jupiter and Capricorn, Jupiter is we've got the Saturn Pluto conjunction coming up in mid-January.
Right.
And then, Mars is going to be, I mean, it's sort of not going to be a pretty picture.
No, it looks very, very, fractious. I mean, it's hard to tell, but but it does look pretty dire in some way, especially we got an eclipse right before that as well.
I mean, with all of these planets going to be in Capricorn at the same time, um, I hope that I am wrong, but I shouldn't even say it this way, but I don't think there's going to be any impeachment this year. I
Yeah.
mean, the impeachment process may go through, but an actual impeachment, I just don't see happening.
Well, that's going to require both sides of the aisle to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the House may get it passed, and that'll be
Um,
solved.
but Jupiter is going to join Saturn and Pluto by the time you get to the spring.
Right, by February, it should be there. By late February, I think early March, it gets there. Yeah.
And so again, I think things are going to get, and Mars is going to be in Capricorn during the same time frame.
Right.
So I think and this isn't just the United States.
Of course not. It's the whole planet.
I mean, I think that think of Mars as the individual soldier,
Hmm.
and Pluto is the atomic bomb.
Yep, that's accurate.
And I think they're going to see more, the continued uprisings.
Rebellion. Yep.
And the other thing is the last time Saturn and Pluto were together in Capricorn. Let me just go.
That's got to be
I mean,
300
actually,
years
wait
ago.
up to the last time. I just want to go. I have it in my notes. Unfortunately, my memory isn't as good as I'd like.
Hey, that's
But
a common plight we all are facing.
but Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus at the same time,
That had to be 300 years ago.
very many years ago.
Yeah.
And so, again, I think that we think about things as, Jupiter will make things better. I don't think so.
Well, I think it can. I suppose it depends on how it's aspected and by what aspects it. There's going to be a time when when Jupiter and Uranus will be trining, and there'll be a time when Mars and Uranus will be trining, and there'll be some, I would hope, some sort of, relief there. Of course, Mars is much more faster moving, so it'll be fairly quick, but there will be a time right around, let me think, it looks like around the end of February middle of February when Mars and Uranus will be trined
Yeah.
in Earth signs, and prior to that, there'll be the Jupiter will be doing the same. But those are, Jupiter may have but the impact, as you say, because they are both relatively fast when you compare to a Saturn or a Uranus or a Neptune or Pluto.
And I think, one of the things I was looking at was the Social Security Act.
Yeah, interesting.
And the Social Security Act was first taxed. Social Security never used to be taxed until Ronald Reagan.
Right, I remember that.
And the Social Security tax it wasn't passed when Jupiter was in Capricorn, but it was instated when Jupiter was in Capricorn.
So that's the initiation of it, which is more important, I think, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
And if you look at the chart for Social Security,
That's the day that it was instated?
yeah.
What's that date?
Oh, wait a minute. Where's my Social Security tax? The Social Security Act was 1935. Uranus was in Taurus.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
the Social Security Act is having a Uranus return.
Which could be revolutionary, given the way that people are talking about it.
Which could be revolutionary in a negative sense.
In negative sense, I mean, what I'm saying is that it actually could cause a revolution. You can't take our money away from us. That would cause a huge riot. I would hope.
Well, supposedly there are plans in progress now.
I know. I've heard that. I've been reading about that.
Now whether whether that actually ever happens or not, who knows? But it's interesting to me that I'm combining this with the values now,
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's right. That's appropriate. Yeah.
and give money to corporate. Jupiter may be a boon to the corporations, but I don't in Capricorn, but it's not going to be a boon to the average person.
No, that's the whole problem with the tax break that these guys got.
No question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's interesting, though, I was sort of going back to see, okay, what happened over the last times Jupiter was in Capricorn. Of course, all of the other outer planets were different, so you can't. It's not
it's
like
not the same picture. It's never the same
it's
picture.
It's comparing apples to oranges, but
Mm-hmm.
just at a
But you still get a thread, at least a flavor of the idea.
exactly. Nixon actually increased Social Security spending when Jupiter was in Capricorn.
Hmm. So he increased payments to people, or
Yep.
okay, interesting.
Yep.
And then Reagan came along and put a tax on them.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure the logic behind the tax. I mean, if it's our money, we've already been taxed on it in some way by taking out of our paychecks and being withheld for all those years.
But I think it was also during the Nixon administration that they allowed, it shouldn't, health care used to not be able to make money.
Right.
So, and the last time Jupiter was in Capricorn was during the financial crisis.
Which financial crisis? We've had several. 2008?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I looked, if we go back to 1996.
Right. So in 2008, Jupiter was in the middle degrees of Capricorn. Pluto had just stepped into Capricorn at that point in time.
Jupiter,
but we had a whole array of planets in Aquarius at the time. Neptune was in Aquarius. I'm looking at February 2008, and Jupiter was there. But you're right. There was no Saturn involved. Pluto had just begun to influence that part of the chart, and Jupiter was there by itself. So in 2008, that would have been a major. There you go. There's a perfect example. A major destructive thing, because we had the theme of the housing crisis and the dot-com bubble, or more importantly, the underpinnings were already there. Jupiter comes along and amplifies that situation to the point where it's sort of the straw that breaks the back, to your point, and amplifies that situation, and then all of a sudden we've got a massive hurry up and save the economy sort of moment. And I was very hopeful at the time that I thought that if instead of giving the TARP bailout funds to Wall Street, if they distributed that money to the average American, the economy would be humming again because we would be going out and buying TVs.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
See, look who the Jupiter and Capricorn benefited. It benefited the banks, the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
It did not benefit people.
No.
And so there was, if you could theoretically look at it like there was more abundance, but look at what it was for.
Yeah, I mean it's amplified. To your point, things are amplified. There's more abundance, but the abundance is not for the common man. The abundance is for the wealthy. And the Capricorn in some ways represents, I think, sort of like the industrial barons in some way, just as a theme overall.
And status.
Status, yeah, exactly. High quality status.
And in this country, who has status but people with money?
Mm-hmm. Opens all the doors for them.
And so it's very. I think things are going to get.
Well, this is.
Or I think we're getting more of the same, unfortunately, rather than, things would be, we're going to see something better.
I think what will happen actually with this, I think that in many ways, this Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction could indicate a sort of an abundance of no money. In other words, a collapse of some sort.
Well, it's very interesting because the only reason the United States isn't bankrupt is because we're the world currency,
mm-hmm.
which means that if other countries want to trade with each other, they have to convert to dollars and then trade whatever they're trading.
Mm-hmm.
Britain used to be the world's currency, and when they were no longer the world currency, it collapsed. I mean, when the United States became the world currency, we were still tied to the gold standard.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
So we were seen as a safe currency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now other countries are trading in their own currencies and bypassing the U.S., and there's going to be more of it.
And so that puts us at risk in some ways because our economy can't sustain without that foundational appeal, which again it brings back to the idea of Pluto. Pluto in Capricorn is sort of my envision of Pluto in Capricorn is sort of tearing down so it can be rebuilt. That's much the way we all think of Pluto as sort of the phoenix rising from the ashes. And it's going to be a responsible correction, I think, a really big responsible correction.
But I think the social change doesn't happen.
No, not unless there's something that precipitates, like you say, like, the idea of Social Security might cause a riot or something like that. People will begin to get. I'm surprised that there hasn't been more public outrage in the United States in general, as we've seen in other parts of the world, like Hong Kong or Brazil or any of the other countries that are having big, huge problems. You see a lot more public in the streets outcry. We don't see that in the United States.
Well, I think that has to do with what you might call fake news.
Oh, of course, yeah, I think it does too. Yeah, we're all being misled.
And well, I mean, it's hard. I mean, unless you read other than the normal press, or listen or find other stations to listen to. CNN and MSNBC are always on the side of the Democrats. Right. Fox News is always on the side of the Republicans, and neither is necessarily telling the truth.
I agree. It's always slanted one way. It's almost as a one-upmanship on one side, just to play like a gigantic ping pong game. I'm throwing stories back and forth. But I do think the Washington Post and the New York Times tend to try to be less. I mean, they both have a bias. There's no question about it. But this is an argument. This is an interesting discussion because, we can say that they're biased, but you have to stop from an objective point of view. And I often mention this when I talk to my other people on interviews about astrology and politics. You and I may both have a bias, but if we see the planets supporting a certain narrative, you can't help but subscribe to that. That's not us necessarily expressing our opinions. That's what the astrology says. Yeah.
But, I think, like, President Trump has a lot of really bad aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that he's going to be thrown out of office.
Right.
I don't think that that's going to happen with Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn. Truthfully, I hope I'm wrong, which I probably shouldn't say on the air. But I just don't see it. Even though his aspects are terrible, I think that things are too conservative. If anything, I don't see things going to become, quote, more liberalized until after Pluto goes into Aquarius, and then we'll see the dark side of that.
Right.
It's sort of like we're right now like the United States was before the American Revolution, which happened with Pluto and Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bill of Rights wasn't written until Pluto went into Aquarius.
Yeah, I think of the Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius as when they finally get there in the coming year rather. I think of them as Saturn saying, okay, this Saturn, Aquarius being the sign of the collective, and Saturn being there as the responsibility, and Jupiter being there to amplify it. It's sort of the Saturn saying to the world, okay, guys, you've made a mess of this planet. Let's clean it up now, and this is the time to do it. This is the collective problem we all share.
Well, I think it starts that trend, but I'm not sure. I don't know how much it changes then.
Right, that's true. I mean, I think the match will be lit. I mean, we have to address this problem. We can't just keep burying our heads in the sand.
Well, I think that the other thing that goes with that is Saturn and Jupiter have been conjunct in air signs for like 180 years.
Mm-hmm.
Saturn and Jupiter are now going to be conjunct in air signs from this time, from the next Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on, which is next year.
Right, and then they'll move on to it'll be Aquarius, and then they'll move on to Gemini beyond that.
But it's about air. It's about ideas.
Ideas, yeah.
Whereas this Saturn-Jupiter has been about money. It's been an
Earth-based values, Earth-based resources, yeah, of course, yeah, foundational.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, again, over a period of years, depending on how old the people listening are, they may or may not be around to see it when it really takes place.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a longer-term change of trend. And I think that with the time frame coming up, Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 1982 was, a very bad time in terms of the stock market.
Yeah, it was. Wasn't it 1989 when the market crashed, the big Black Friday in October?
That was 87.
That was 87. Okay, right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
1989 actually wasn't Saturn Pluto, but it was Saturn. That time around that time frame was Saturn Neptune, and that was a real estate crash.
Real estate crash, yep.
And people don't remember that,
Hmm.
but that was the last time that the real estate crashed before this time. The difference was then it was what you might call a roving crash. So it didn't crash in every part of the country at the same time. The time the Jupiter, the 2008. Well, actually, the real estate started to crash before anybody talked about it.
Well, that was all those bad loans, those, that they.
Right.
Right.
But that started really as long ago as 2005, not in 2008.
Right. It didn't catch up to us till then.
2008 was when the market caught up with it.
Hmm. Well, they were selling loans to people who didn't have to have any qualifications, and they were buying. I remember seeing houses, people living in $800,000 houses and driving a beat up car. Like, this can't work. It just doesn't work this way. And so the thing that I think that the comment about Jupiter being, it does have abundant qualities to it. It does have benefit qualities to it, but it also does the idea of it amplifying, and coming into this situation in conservative Capricorn makes you wonder if that's not going to be helping, sort of the right wing in there.
That's my fear.
Yeah. Hmm. I can see that. That actually makes pretty good sense in a way. But the president does have bad aspects. There's no question about it. We saw Mitch Lewis talk about it, and we pointed out the solar arc Uranus on his ascendant, which is, he's been to the doctor's office already. We don't know what's going on there. It may not be politically that he has problems, but it may be other kinds of problems.
He obviously has problems politically, but I think the question is, do the problems lead to impeachment? Because those are two different things.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you've been listening to the hearings at all this week, they make some pretty good points. I understand the right. I understand trying to be objective about this and approach it with an open mind. But when you're selling influence to a foreign country to interfere with our election, I don't know how you could not call that treason or whatever.
Again, I have no argument with what's going on and what's been said but my question is, where is it going to lead?
Right. Well, if nothing else, it'll leave a dark spot on his presidency, on the history. That's one thing. I think that he will be impeached by the House. I'm not sure it's not going to get past the House, but
yes, but the Senate's he's never going to be impeached from office, is my point.
Right. And neither was Bill Clinton, and that's the same sort of thing.
I actually don't think it's the same sort of thing.
I think it's dramatically different. I'm saying the concept of impeachment.
I think if somebody has consensual sex, whatever it is, they shouldn't. In Kennedy's era, they would have never asked anybody about it.
Right, of course not.
Again, I'm not saying that what he did was proper. That's a different question.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't.
It's not a national security issue.
Exactly.
We're not trying to sway election to help a foreign adversary, and we're not trying to hold back. The audacity of trying to hold back funds from an ally to help favor the Russians or to help his own personal agenda is an impeachable offense. I don't know, and I think they have no choice. It wasn't as if they had a choice here. The other side saying, "Oh, well, I think they ran into this too quickly." If they didn't make a point of it now, and if everybody wasn't withholding their records, they would say this is okay. You can't condone this problem. And if with so many things being withheld, no documents coming out, no files are coming out, people are being told not to go to avoid subpoenas. Obviously, if there was something to hide, if there's nothing to hide, then show us. That's pretty obvious.
I have no qualms about what he deserves. I'm just saying that with the planetary combinations that are going on now, I think there'll be lots of fights and conflict. But I don't think things are going to change.
No, I don't either. I can see that for sure.
I would like to be wrong.
Yeah, no, I know. I get you. I know. But you can't always fight with the stars here. We're talking today with Joyce Levine. She's an astrologer, a well-known astrologer, was the former president of the NCGR, those of you who follow the astrology groups in the world. She's also the author of Breakthrough Astrology, which you can find on Amazon and other book outlets. And her website is Joyce Levine, JoyceLevine.com, Joyce Levine. We'll take a quick break here and we'll be back to continue our discussion about Pluto and Capricorn along with Saturn and Jupiter. It's a heady mix, and I've talked about this topic quite a bit over the last several months because it's so relevant and so clear. It's classic astrology. So hang in there. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.turningofthewheel.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. And enter a world of possibility and color.
Okay, welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. My guest today is Joyce Levine, the one and only. She is the former president of the NCGR and also the author of Breakthrough Astrology, which you can find on her website and other book outlets, as well as Amazon, I'm sure. And her website is joycelevine.com. And we've been talking about the Jupiter recently just moved into Capricorn, so it's a big news. And we always tend to think of Jupiter as being, hooray, Jupiter's here, our time to play in the sun is here. But Jupiter in Capricorn is not at all like Jupiter in Sagittarius. When it was in Sagittarius, it's the place it rules. It was much happier. Things were happening. But in Capricorn, it's a different story, and especially given the neighbors that it's going to be adjoining in the Capricorn domain are serious, heavy players. And in this case, we both think that the Jupiter would tend to amplify whatever the seriousness that's there. And so when we look at that rolling out and looking at it coming into the coming year, you wonder how that would play out with regard to, say, the election. Of course, that's pretty close. Jupiter by then will be very much near the end of his cycle, for the most part, late degrees. So what do you think of that, Joyce?
Again, I hope I'm wrong. I think he's going to be reelected, and something will happen after that.
Something along the lines of there'll be something he'll pull off some other fraud thing or get caught.
There'll be something that occurs. I don't know, if there's going to be any kind of impeachment, resignation, or whatever. I think it'll come after the election. Again.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, it could make it that far, unless he gets us into a war somehow, or North Korea pulls us into a war through some sort of retaliatory thing. I saw that he's trying to send 14,000 troops to Iran, I guess, to help something over there. I'm not sure what's going on with that yet, but the idea that this is one of the biggest fears of being in a war when a president needs to be reelected, because people very reluctantly will change horses midstream if you're in a war. And
I'm not sure he wants a war.
Oh, I don't think he wants a war, but it may be the kind of thing that is, it gets him to stay in office if he's so desperate to stay in office. One of the problems he has is if he leaves office, he's going to be completely vulnerable to all the things that he's been, done wrong. He's sort of painted himself into a corner now.
Well, I think, again, it's with this Supreme Court, it's hard to know what he's going to be held vulnerable for one way or another.
Yeah, no, I know. But it's a very difficult situation. I know Chief Justice Roberts is sort of in a unusual position here with this with the court and the way it's headed this way. But the idea of when we see Mars and Jupiter will be both trining Uranus, and that is a sort of a typically tends to be more of a positive outcome, or it can be a surprise positive outcome. That's often the case, but not always. Sometimes the squares are more revealing.
Well, frequently, again, I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, but frequently nothing happens with trines.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's always a smooth.
It's the harsher aspects that are more event oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have, like for an individual, if you have a trine for something in your chart, if it's activating planetary combinations that are already aspected in your birth chart,
right,
then that's going to work a lot differently than if it's just something that's going on in the sky to your chart.
Right. I think if a trine in a natal chart indicates an area where a person has a sense of ease, or they have a sense of, it's almost a given that they can do this. Maybe it's a natural talent. But the squares are where you really find the challenge. And the challenge is that if we are here to evolve, I think of a square as a step on a staircase. And going up a staircase is hard sometimes. You got to climb, you got to pull yourself up, you got to get yourself back down. But going up those is a challenge, and that's the challenge. But when you get through the challenge, you get the reward of climbing the stairs. That's just a metaphor for how I see the squares.
This is something else I would like to point out. People think that trines mean that you're good and squares mean that you're bad, or oppositions mean that you're bad. Trines are what a person does easily.
Easily, and then squares are where your challenges.
It doesn't mean that what they're doing is good.
Mm-hmm.
It means it's easier for them to do it.
Right, and the squares provide the challenges, which is where the growth comes.
As Mars gets to Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, and that's coming right up.
Yeah.
So, I think that and the other thing is, again, it's not limited to this country, and I also think it's not limited to the president. Mm-hmm. I think that things in the Democratic Party, in terms of, they're fighting each other.
Oh, I know. They're having a terrible time trying to find a voice, and the more people that jump in, the more complicated it gets.
I think that's going to get a lot more conflict-driven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the more infighting they have, the less powerful they become. They need a unifying force, and you think that this would be a slam dunk. If you open the newspaper 20 years ago and you saw this in the newspaper, you'd say, "Wow, the Democrats can easily take this clown down. It shouldn't be a problem at all." But obviously, it's much harder than we thought because of the approach he's taken. He's sort of taken this infantile approach that appeals to a very low base for some reason, a base that doesn't seem to be very well educated or informed. And
the Democratic Party, believe it or not, is a Taurus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they have a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which is the idealism, in Libra, but it's opposite Saturn and Capricorn.
Yeah.
It's opposite Saturn and Aries. And the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is squaring that
point. Yeah. So there comes the challenge there. So they really are challenged. Yeah.
There are Uranus has gone past their Venus, and it's not going to get to their Sun, around the election, in any time soon.
And it's not within orb, no.
Yeah, but, I think that this is where you see the struggle that's going on between what you might call the Saturn Democrats, which are the pragmatists.
Right.
And the idealist Democrats, which is the Jupiter-Neptune. Mm-hmm.
They have so many people out there that it's very difficult to sort of boil that down to a single plank or a single platform. How do you cobble all these things together to get someone that's solid and who is powerful enough out there, who has the charisma to take on this person when he's going to go the way he goes. I mean, the biggest thing is calling him out on stage, and the time that it happens is say, hey, that's a lie, or whatever, just being able to be bullied back to him. But that demeans the character as well.
Well, I think that the struggle in the Democratic Party is going to be going on first.
Oh, it's undergoing now.
Before it gets to, that's what I mean, before it gets to the election time. And it's a struggle between what you might call they're not liberal. They're really it's beyond liberal.
Yeah, it's not liberal. Liberal's too broad of a term for them.
It's become what you might call the extreme left.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's where they get tagged as socialists, which is. But socialism is what gives us Social Security. Socialism is what gives you snowplows on the highway. Socialism is what gives you cars and roads and tax systems. Those are they're for all of the people.
Remember, Pluto. The sign that Pluto is in is what breaks down, and Capricorn rules government. And what's happening now is the conservatives are systematically breaking down the government.
Right.
And so I would say all of the Democrats, for the most part, are on the other side of that. The question is how far they go.
Right. And, there's nothing wrong with breaking down certain parts of the government if they don't work. Our Constitution was written 250 years ago, so things are definitely changed. It's okay to contemporize the Constitution and rewrite it. The problem is that what the Republicans are doing is that they're throwing the Constitution away and getting in bed with a foreign adversary.
Well, I think that if you look at, there are people that, it's not in the Constitution. Well, women didn't have the right to vote in the Constitution either.
Right. Exactly.
And blacks were 3/4 of a person.
Well, there's no way the framers could possibly consider every outcome that could happen in 300 years in the future. They could never even imagine the idea of a tweet or a fake news or anything like, or YouTube or Facebook or anything. They could never comprehend that.
We couldn't comprehend that 20 years ago.
No, I know. That's true, too. So
it's not just that they couldn't, but the world changes and things have to adapt.
Right. I think that's true.
Capricorn is a conservative sign that looks at tradition, looks at what's been done before. It's not a sign that wants change.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very staid, stolid, and it's very, very stuck in its ways in some ways. Very slow-moving, kind of conservative, grounded.
And so that's where we are at this point. And that's why I don't think at this point in time that anything's going to change.
Yeah, it might be right. I mean, I tend to be more optimistic, and maybe I'm naive in that regard, or just wishful thinking that's the case. I tend to think that there's ultimately our purpose is for the good. Eventually, I think that, and that may be true on an individual basis, but how does that pan out on a collective basis? We have to agree somewhere.
Let me say this: I think that eventually that's true. I just don't think it's true now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we see big changes in this country is when Pluto is in Aquarius, maybe, after it's been in there a while.
Yeah.
So looking like after 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when like the Parkland students are of age. It's like
aren't they going to be of age now?
Yeah, but it's sort of, there's a time that people come into their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the trends will change then.
Which is a ways down the road, so we got to wait for that to happen.
Down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing you want to remember is that Pluto was in Capricorn during the American Revolution. The Bill of Rights was written with Pluto in Aquarius, and after the French Revolution, the off with the heads came when Pluto was in Aquarius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's when I think it's coming here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think it would be as radical as that? I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, you'd think I mean, the times do warrant it. When you look at income inequality, that's going to get people madder than anything you can possibly imagine.
Well, income inequality now is the same as it was during the Gilded Age, which was the 20s, right before the 30s,
Right.
right before the
The Roaring
29th
Twenties.
century.
Right. Yeah.
And it's government policies by both Democrats and Republicans that have put us in this shape. It's not just the Republicans.
No, of course not. It has to
It,
be by both sides.
I mean, Bill Clinton took the Democratic Party to the right, and it's never looked back. Most Democrats today are what used to be considered Rockefeller Republicans, which
Yeah.
were liberal on social issues, but conservative on financially. And this is obviously my opinion. I think that the Republicans take care of the rich. The Democrats have taken care of the rich and the poor, and everybody has neglected the middle class, which has diminished
Dramatically, and that's the financial engine of the country is the middle class. So without them, you can't get the same quality. So when people, like right now, they're talking about the holiday spending being big, and people are spending money, and everything looks great stuff because presumably people are all working. You can see it in the clogged highways and the parking lots. People are out there working and they're making money. But if that suddenly comes to a screeching halt because people, because they pay taxes and they haven't got the disposable income they once had, and people stop buying refrigerators and televisions and stuff, then the economy really begins to show.
well. But I think that you have to look at not just the people who are working, but the kind of jobs they have.
Yeah, well, they're not at all what they used to be.
And how many people are living in their cars that actually have jobs because they can't afford a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, income inequality now is as bad as it was in the 20s. And
Right, which makes me think about the idea of a depression and does the market collapse, and what is it, if it does collapse, what does that look like? What is it, is it massive layoffs across the country? Is it massive unemployment? If that whole thing turns around at any point in time.
well, I think that the thing that's important to recognize is corporations are now multinational.
Right.
They don't care who buys their product as long as it sells.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter what market it's in, right? And there's a huge market in China, so.
Well, not if we can't get in there.
That's true, yeah.
But the multinational corporations are the ones that started outsourcing, going overseas to get for cheaper labor.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was driven by union wages here.
well, but union wages were when people had money.
Right. And it was understandable that they had to have that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being unionized because you can't be taken advantage of, which is a wise decision. But when the unions started asking for more money and kept pushing the price tag up, other companies started to divest and go overseas for cheaper labor.
But I would say they would have anyway.
Well, I think, maybe even without the unions they would have gone just because the labor cheaper? Yeah.
Money flows to the lowest common denominator. So if
I see myself as pretty low common denominator.
Well, what I meant by that is if China gets too expensive, the companies will go to
They'll go to Vietnam or Malaysia, who knows where. Yeah, they'll go someplace else.
It's the supply chains are about the finances.
Yes, of course they are, yeah.
And I mean, Trump is not wrong about everything. I mean, but the corporations, let China get a hold of their intellectual property because they wanted those markets, and now they're sorry because everything has been stolen.
Right. No, he's not wrong about everything. I've often thought that, as we are the world's policemen, we play the biggest price tag. I think that we should not be paying as much money as we do to protect the world. Other countries should chip in. I think he's right about that. There's a few things I agree with him on, but overall, I mean, just as a person, as a character.
Well, it's a different, I'm talking about specific policies, not the person.
Right, of course. Yeah, me too.
But, I mean, the United States cannot afford to be the world's policeman anymore.
Right.
You read The Rise and Fall of Great Powers. You overextend. You can't keep track of anything anymore.
Well, you're too diluted. Your resources are too diluted.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's where this country is. And again, I don't think it's going to be a pretty picture when people when other countries significantly start trading in their own currencies.
And they bypass us altogether. Yeah, that's
That,
when we're going to feel the pain. And of course, then plus we've got our huge deficit, which is enormous, and that's going to. But there's nobody really calling us the shots on that. I mean, if no, China's not going to say give us our money back right away. They can't do that.
well, they may not say give us our money back, but central banks around the world are buying gold.
Hmm. Interesting, are they? Because they're going to try to return to the gold standard.
No, because it's a safe haven. Because they don't trust this anymore.
Oh, I see. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Mhm.
The
And they have no reason to trust us that we might break a deal and they won't. We may back out of a contract. We don't know. There's no way anybody should believe
the
it.
thing is, the only reason that the United States appears solvent is because the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, which is, owes money.
Right.
I mean, the idea that Obama got us out of the economic crisis is an illusion. The banks, nobody ever got paid back, because if they got paid back, the Federal Reserve wouldn't be sitting on all that debt.
Well, when you say got paid back, I mean, we bailed out the big banks in Wall Street.
Yes, exactly. That's who got.
I
That's who
thought
got
that money
paid.
was paid back. I thought that they actually made money back on that with the interest, and a lot of it's been paid back, I thought.
Well, the money that was directly lent was paid back, but not the additional money.
Oh, I see. Hmm.
It's an illusion, and it's illusion fostered by both parties. Just like the unemployment rate, it's very low but that doesn't take into account the people that are no longer looking for jobs.
Or the people who are working 2 or 3 small jobs, or just the fact that if they're over 30 hours, they're considered full time. Many people are working, they were 40 hours, now they're working less hours, and the labor figures are way off. I agree with you there.
And it doesn't, and the inflation rate is a joke.
Mm.
I mean, do these people go to the grocery store?
Yeah.
Even when commodity prices went down, because they've been down, the cost of food did not go down.
Right. None of the prices have gone down, for that matter.
And so I think, all of those, I would say all of those books are cooked. And people believe it. The economy is not the stock market.
Oh, I know.
And people keep looking at, because the stock market's up, okay, everything's good. If your 401k is up. But a good portion of this country does not have a 401k.
The only thing good about the economy with the stock market is it helps the people who already have money to begin with, because they're already investing in it and they're reaping huge dividends.
And it helps the people who are invested, and it helps the average person if they have a job that pays for, where they have a 401k.
Right.
But it's just like the health insurance. If anybody really believes that the Affordable Care Act was a benefit for everybody, they should think again. I mean, I know how many people, it was a benefit for the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies, and for people who don't have any money.
Mm-hmm. Well, it provided some sort of a safety net, I think you could say. And maybe not a very strong one, but at least for some people, it provided some sort of safety net.
Well, for the pre-existing conditions, part of it was good.
Mm-hmm.
But I know so many people that are spending thousands of dollars a year for health insurance and have a $5,000 deductible.
Yeah, that's insane. That's totally insane.
So they still can't afford to go to the doctor, is my point.
Absolutely insane.
But those policies are legal, which they shouldn't be.
No, I agree. But this is the problem. And when you talked earlier about the the political system being broken and this being an opportunity to repair it, we have to, I think, term limits on senators and term limits on everybody who's in the damn office down there would get new blood moving through, and we wouldn't be bound by people who are lifetime politicians who have a different agenda and are taking money from outside sources.
Well, the other part of it is, do you know that anybody that serves in Congress gets a lifetime salary of
Oh, I know.
After one term.
After one term, you have to serve. If you can be a congressman from anywhere in the country and you serve for one term, and you get a full lifetime pension and health care.
When they talk about cutting benefits, how about cutting theirs?
Yeah, I mean, but who's to stop them? Who overrides them? If they're all in cahoots together, that's why the system is broken in that regard. That's why term limits would solve a problem. And unbelievably, it was Ted Cruz who introduced that idea. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but when I heard him talk about it, I was very surprised.
Well, term limits wouldn't solve the economic problem if they all get benefits.
No, true, but at least you would get new ideas in there. They wouldn't be, their time is limited.
Theoretically, term limits are elections.
I know that's true.
So people can throw people out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
what's to stop us? I know.
I think the trend now is to get rid of anybody old, no matter how good they may be.
Right, I know that is true because we're sick of it. People
are
tired.
Which is the opposite.
Yeah, which is why someone like Pete Buttigieg might be an appealing candidate because he's a very smart, well-spoken, articulate guy, very together, and he could be the face of a new generation, which is what I think we need. That I mean, we don't need any more of these old men walking around, voting on women's rights. We don't need. I mean, if I was a woman, I'd be livid having a bunch of men vote on my body.
Well, but the Democrats at least tend to vote the way that most women would want to see them vote, no matter who they are.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the big thing that could happen, when you talk about what's going to be occurring over the next year and stuff, but one unknown is the voter turnout, which I think is going to be enormous this time. And if the voter turnout, so what happens if the voter turnout, supposing we get an election and the Democrats instead of getting 3 million votes, get 8 million votes, but the Electoral College still puts Trump in. Isn't there some argument there that says that the popular vote should override?
I agree completely, but those, I don't know why, but people that have been harmed by his policies, a lot of them still want to give him a chance.
Well, there's a certain cult quality to it. It's like being in the military, and I have nothing wrong with being in the military, but when you're in the military, you don't have to really think that much. I'm not saying that's the case for everyone. I'm making a very broad general statement. But if you're a private in the military, you're given your clothes, you're told where to go, you're told what to do all day long. There's no real intellectual thought process going on. You're told what to do. And if you have the same sort of blind follower, that sort of the closed-eye, chauvinistic kind of person who thinks that their country is right or wrong no matter what, and you're going to be stuck with that. And it's a very difficult logjam to break, I think.
No, because the swing states are who elects the president.
I know.
And they may still be for him. I mean, that's the sad part. And what's happened, there's just such a bifurcation, not just Democrat and Republican, but between city and rural.
Yeah, I know, and that's a huge and I don't think there's any way to really get that message out there. I mean, this is what the Democratic message should be. You've lost money over the last 4 years. You want to lose more money. Is your bank account getting bigger? Are you happy with where you are? People will say, "Well, I'm employed. I got a roof over my head. And I got food on the table, so I guess I'm okay." But
things are about relative deprivation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good word.
And so, if you have, real wages have not gone up in 40 years.
I know.
And that's a statistic. That's not my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're in Massachusetts where, we have high tech, we have finance, we have biotech, and if you're living in any place that you've lived in for a long time, your net worth has skyrocketed, not because you did anything smart, but because, you own valuable real estate.
Right.
But in a lot of parts of the country, industries have disappeared.
Oh, I know. It's huge. And the fact that we turned our back on the solar industry, which would have been a thriving, booming industry to move into. Instead, we go out and we back coal instead. So archaic.
Actually, I just read an article that Tesla has a solar panel roof that there's, I guess, I don't know if they're selling it now or they're going to be selling it, that's not going to cost any more than a regular roof.
Right, and you just apply it to the roof. The problem with the solar roof is you have to take the old roof off to put the new one on typically. But this can go on top of it would be great, or if it could just be a roof itself. Put new roofs on that are simply solar panels rather than putting shingles down and then the things on top. But I think Elon Musk has got some great ideas, and he's definitely one who could be leading the charge towards where we're headed as far as the climate's concerned. But I think some of your comments are very well founded, and I do tend to agree with you, but I try to be a little bit more optimistic. I mean, that may not do any good, but still, it's nice to think that way, that if the election may be enough to sway things, but, you're interesting that, it may not go as we planned, and we may be here for quite some time in this situation. So that's the story.
I guess my Saturn is stronger than yours.
Yeah, I think so. Well, probably so. Anyway, Joyce, it's been nice talking to you today. My guest today has been Joyce Levine. She's an astrologer who's got many, many years of experience, and I encourage you to contact her for readings and personal consultations. Her website is joycelevine.com, JoyceLevine.com. And she's also the author of Breakthrough Astrology, and she was the former president of the NCGR organization, which many of us astrologers belong to. So, Joyce, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. And let's hope that some of your dire predictions aren't quite as dire as you say.
Truthfully, I hope so too.
Right, I do too. I understand. It's perfectly right. So anyway, thanks so much for coming on today and having a good conversation with me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.